Hail them.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Hailing frequencies. Open.
I don't know why I keep giving alien street food a chance. It's always such a gamble.
Captain, we're being hailed.
On screen.
Hello, and welcome to another Hailing Frequencies Open podcast, where we continue to trek through the past and future of Star Trek. As always, I'm your host, and joining me here in the virtual studio, he's working on a book of his own, but it's a collection of strongly worded letters that he wrote to Paramount as a child. It's Damien.
This is true. And actually, I was thinking, because normally I know Lenita, who's not here, writes my intro. So I'm pretty well accustomed to being insulted at the beginning, but I'm not insulted at all. So so we're off to a good start.
And welcoming back to the pod, he's my friend and yours. It's Matt Jennings.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I'm happy to be back.
Yay! We're so glad to have you. As we already said, Lenita can't be here today, so thank you so much for filling her chair. And I'm sure that it's going to be a great conversation. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, we did ask her. We were like, who could sub for you? And there was not even a pause. There was not even a pause. She named your name right away. And
I didn't know she named my name. Oh,
she
man.
did.
Oh, gee.
She did. So
Aww. Yeah. Okay, that makes me feel good.
Yes.
Yay. All right, you've already read the title of the episode, so you know why we're here. Our guest today is an award-winning author, screenwriter, and photographer. You may know his writings from the Star Trek Adventures tabletop role-playing game, or his best-selling book, The Autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, or maybe you've seen him on his own YouTube podcast channel, Soul of the Story. It's Derek Tyler Attico. Welcome so much.
Mike, Damien,
welcome.
Hey.
Derek Tyler Attico, we're so excited to have you.
That's me. Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. I was telling Mike, I was listening to your earlier show, actually with Matt, and it was a blast.
Okay.
And I was like, when I was supposed to be cleaning, but for like a half an hour, just staring into space, listening to the episode, it was so good. I was like, oh man, it's good and bad. I didn't get any work done, but it was a great episode. So this is going to be fun.
Well, we've been known to go for a bird walk or two off. You know, is that the right term, Mike?
Yeah, bird walk. That's what I call it when we go way off topic. That goes back to my freshman English teacher, called them bird walks, and she was a weird lady.
Honestly, most of the time they are. I've had some very strange English teachers as well. Like they were great, but they were some kooky people.
She was the last year she taught before she retired, and I remember one day she came in wearing fishnet stockings and high heels, and I was like, "Oh, okay, you're ready for retirement."
Yes, not mad at it.
Crazy.
I remember my English honors teacher, Miss Tisdale, and I went to Taft High School in the Bronx, and I was in honors. So what happened was, with honors program, you had a group of teachers that you had for all 4 years. You didn't really change, teachers, which was really cool. So I had Miss Tisdale, and I remember like 11th grade, around 11th grade, I wrote the script, and I gave it to her to like correct for me, and she didn't give it back for like months. And I was like, "What's she doing in my script?" And I'm like, "Miss Tisdale, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, I'll give it back to you, but you got to come to this place with me. I already got your mom's authorization." I'm like, "What is going on?" And she entered it into a contest, and which was so like nuts, because I was like at the time like 17, so it was just nuts. And she entered it, and it was the Dramatist Guild of America. They took 12 students out of 12,000 across the country, and I was one of 12. And I didn't even know how to act. I didn't know anything. But my whole point of saying that is that English teachers are dope.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, they are.
They may be a little kooky, but they don't.
Yes.
Because if she hadn't done that, it was like that first step in that journey for me, So that's crazy. It's crazy.
That's cool.
Man,
Yeah,
that's
she saw something
beautiful.
special in you and wanted to nurture it. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you to teachers just in general, the ones that,
For
when they see something when they see something in someone and they kind of give that nudge. Thank you.
real.
Thank you, teachers out there. Thank you for that. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's jump into it. So how did you get connected with our friends, everyone's friends, the Sci-Fi Sisters?
Oh, that's a great story, man. Okay, so yeah, just all you have to do is give me a little, and I'll just go with it. But uh, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was at shore leave, and I had come out of a panel, and there was these two ladies that just were like looking at me during the panel, and I was like, "What's going on?" And these two ladies came up to me after the panel and said, "We're the Sci-Fi Sisters, and we heard you were at this panel, you're gonna be at this convention. So we came, and we also came to see you because we like your work." And at the time, I had done the Star Trek short stories, and I had been doing some other stuff. And I was like, wow, and it was like one of the first times that someone actually said, "Hey, I came to see you as an author,"
Mm-hmm.
and that was just incredible. And so I was like, "Oh well, since you came, let me give you some free books, let me just
Yeah.
sign whatever you have and give whatever you have, give whatever you want." And so that was how I first met the Sci-Fi Sisters. And we just started communicating after that. And there were times that I think that people come into your life, we have a good feeling about them,
Yeah.
and if you're fortunate, your circles intersect, and our circles kept intersecting at cons. And I really enjoyed what they were doing. I really enjoyed the podcast, Sci-Fi Sisters,
Mm-hmm.
and just talking to them, they were telling me that they were thinking about branching out, and I was like, "Oh, really?" Because I would really like to do a podcast. I've been wanting to do one for a very long time,
Mm,
but I for one, it's a lot to do a podcast on your own. I want to do something that was unique, and I think this might be a really good use the term. This might be a really good marriage of working with the Sci-Fi Sisters, and we all have the same values, and we all have the same vision. And he said, "You know what? Let's think about it." So I started talking to the sisters. I started talking specifically to Yvette, and a lot of the ideas that I had, they really liked. 'Cause I wanted to do something that talked not just about writing, but about individuals that are established in the arts, their personal stories, but also how they see their own craft, and the soul of their stories individually, their stories in their art. And I thought that was something that would have a lot of mileage and allow me to talk to individuals in dance and film, in writing, in comedy, actors, um, but more than that, I thought it's an opportunity. Hopefully people will find it interesting, because it shouldn't just be me yakking. It should be people finding it interesting and getting something out of it. And if that's the case, then it'll really do well. So we launched, and Kavita Maharaj, the phenomenal Kavita Maharaj, who paints all of these phenomenal Star Trek paintings, was my first guest, and I learned a lot from talking to her, and it's just been going forward since then.
I listened to the or watched the interview that you did with Kavita, and
Right,
it's fascinating. There's similarities with artists. There's like this through line when it comes to how the emotion, how your inner self is tied to the craft. I can't remember specifically what it was she was talking about, but I think it was her teacher describing how she paints or the way that she paints. And at some point, that story came full circle
right, right.
into something that happened. I think something that happened in her life and how it was somehow informing how she painted, just physically how she painted. And with writers, you and I have discussed being in a certain emotional place when you're writing a certain portion of the book, and having to take a break because of the emotional demand. Actors, obviously the same thing, because you're pulling
Same
from
thing.
it's fascinating. But I love that.
To quote a term, right?
Right, yes.
It is fascinating. And you, Matt, were a guest on my show. And that third line is what I was hoping to grab hold onto and to achieve. And you're not sure you're going to get that out of every guest, so that or that it's even there,
Mhm.
but just talking to you, to Kavita, to Dayton Ward, and my last guest of book one was the non-visitor. You
Yeah.
could see that third line, you know,
Yeah.
and it's there, it's present. Regardless of the individual, it's there, and that's more than I could ever hope for. And now going forward, that was those four individuals. They were book one. The four chapters were comprised of book one, which is really season one.
Yeah.
And now, now we're going to be doing book two, season two,
Cool.
starting February 12th.
That's so exciting.
Wow.
I did, I'm not gonna lie, I did listen to your episode with Matt first, because with Matt it seemed like a good way
Right,
in. And
right.
then and it was great because I felt like, because sometimes with these Star Trek actors, it feels like you can see that them glaze over when they're answering a question that they've been asked 1,000 times.
Right, right.
And
That's true.
it was really, really nice to see you and Nana, and what you could tell she felt like was a fresh conversation, and talking about things that she had never, or if not entirely new, things that she had never, ways that she'd never talked about them. So it was really, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So
And I'm thankful because every time I listen to a podcast like Hailing Frequencies or just other podcasts, that I'm learning. I'm new to this, so I'm learning, and I realized I was gushing a little bit over Nana, and her book is so good. Oh my God! And I kept talking about her book, but it was like it was the arena for it. But her book is just written so well that I found I couldn't stop praising it. And I think that's what you want though on a show like that. But you're right. She really brought a deeper level to that thorough line. And at one point we were talking about what it's like being a woman going, as an actor and actress, and working on shows, and what that's like. And now that she's a writer, and the juxtaposition, it was a lot of interesting elements in our conversation. Really good stuff.
Mhm.
it was delightful. Um, I I'm eager to talk to you about your book. uh,
What book?
What
What book?
book? The
Which one?
because it's fresh in my brain. It is the only book currently. So, Autobiography of Benjamin Sisko. First of all, how do you even get that gig? Like, that's got to be a story unto itself, no?
That's the story, man. Yeah, that's the
Mm.
story. It's nuts. Um, so 2016, uh, pocketbook Simon and Schuster for that was what, the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. They
Mm,
brought back the Star Trek Strange New Worlds anthology series, and so that anthology series is basically short stories that fans write short stories for the Star Trek Strange New World series. The editors pick 10 to 12 stories, and they pick the best of all the ones that they receive. They usually pick about 10 to 12. Those get in, and those are comprised. Those are they become a Star Trek Strange New Worlds book. This is obviously before the Star Trek Strange New Worlds series,
Mhm.
right? So that ran for 10 years. So that ran for 10 years. I was in number 8 in 2005. So it ended like in 2007, but they brought it back for the 50th anniversary. So I wrote a Deep Space Nine Benny Russell story, and
oh,
I didn't know if it was going to get in or not. Well, the dream of the dream, but it got in to the 50th anniversary Star Trek Strange New Worlds anthology series. Lo and behold, like 2 years ago, someone on Twitter says on a Titan like Twitter feed or something, they're like, "Oh, if you're looking for someone to do the autobiography of Benjamin Sisko, this guy Attico wrote a really cool." There was a method to my madness of going through this whole long story. Trust me, there's a
No,
method.
yeah,
So
no.
wait, I'm sorry. Was
yeah.
this someone you know, or is this just like
No,
someone who read?
no.
That's
This is right.
uh
So they like, he wrote this really good story. Um, this is the guy for it. And I think what happened was that was like it was like someone it was like on someone's podcast. It wasn't even Titan, I think. It was on someone's podcast. And they were talking about the fact that they had done the Janeway autobiography and Sisko had been skipped. So someone was like, "Hey, you should get this guy to do Sisko." And so one day I'm going on to Twitter and I'm like, why is my name going up on Twitter? And it's because people are talking about that. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Lo and behold, Twitter also, Titan also found out about that. And so then they went and read the story and thought I would be a good fit. So, I know I gave you guys a long way around the block.
Yeah,
No, not at
that's
all.
such
No,
a
that's-
good story.
yeah.
Well, it's an interesting story, right? And what's so cool about that is I never thought I would get it at all. Never in a million years. But like we all do, I'm sure like you do, Matt, when you see someone, acting in something, you're like, oh, well, how would I perform that, or how would I do that?
Yeah.
Right?
It's like the cover. It's like when for me, it's almost like someone covering a song.
Right.
I always think of
Exactly.
it that way.
Right. And so I was thinking, well, how would I do Sisko? How would I do it? Because he's in the wormhole. How would I do it? So I was thinking about this for a few years. I was like, oh, yeah, I could do it this way. I could do it that way. So then I get this is what, 2023. I get a direct message tweet from George Sanderson, managing editor at Titan. He's like, I'd like to speak to you. We have a conversation. He's like, I think you'd be a good fit. I read the DS9 short story. I think you'd be a good fit for autobiography. Let's talk about how you would do it.
Wow.
And I'm like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
This is nuts.
Wow.
Is this happening?
Wow.
And George Sanderson is an incredible editor, I should say. So
I was expecting the story to involve like, well, my agent reached out, you know what I
oh
mean?
no.
My
like-
people
No,
call their
man.
people.
Right, like this is
It's
like, you put
organic.
yourself out there and actually got
Yeah.
recognized, and yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Total grassroots. I've never had an agent, actually. I'm approaching the place where I would like to get an agent, but I've never had an agent. And then George and I had this really interesting conversation because he was like, well, Sisko's in the wormhole, so we really can't do a true autobiography. What we would like to do is do it through Jake, because in the series, as an older man, Jake writes this book called Avalon, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we
And-
can do it that way, and it'll be a story about Jake, and it'll be Benjamin's autobiography as well. And my attitude was like, well, hey, I haven't gotten the gig yet, so what do I say? Do I go along to get along? Do I just say yes, that's a good idea, or what do I do? And I was like, look, George, I know we just met, but I think that's a good idea. I think that story should be told, but the other 4 autobiographies are great, and they're all in the captain's voice. I think we should stick with that. I have a way to do that. And he was like, well, how are you going to do that? And I was like, well,
So good. Oh, it's so good. The device you come up with is like,
I know.
right?
because it's such a
I'm like,
challenge.
well,
Because you're like,
you
you can't omit the 7 years that he spends in Deep Space Nine, but the audience,
Right.
we don't need to hear that story. We know that story.
Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
so how do you
You're
tell?
one of the first people to say that. Yes.
Yes, we're so
you need that story.
the whole
Right.
genre presents a challenge. Like, how do you even do that? and you solve it. So I mean, you can talk about how you solve it. I mean, rather than hear
No,
it from me, but
I'm listening to you. But I was like, well, he sends a message to his son, and I come from a religious background,
Mm.
Baptist, and I've I'm fairly well read, so I've read a lot of classics, a lot of mythology, and so I realized that the thing I would have to do is I have to sell it to the reader, right? And and the easiest way to sell it to the reader is in something you package it in something familiar. So everyone, no matter where they are in the world, they have some kind of mythology where the gods are speaking to man, right? Or in religion, where whoever and however you worship, at some point, the entity that you may worship speaks to man.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
not that far fetched for then now Benjamin in this place to send a signal, and that signal is not about anything like going to happen in the Starfleet or anything. He's just trying to talk to his son, man.
Mm.
He's just trying to send a message to his kid because
Ugh.
that's the one thing that we didn't see happen in the last episode. And in him talking to Jake and telling Jake about everything that he thinks a young man should know, he is telling about his life in autobiography.
it's really beautiful, and it makes
Ugh.
perfect sense because the prophets, over the span of the centuries that we're aware of them existing, have sent all kinds of things
Yeah,
into that
Right,
area of space. So
they're non-linear.
Right.
it
right,
makes perfect
right,
sense.
Yeah.
right. It's non-linear.
Wibbly
Um,
wobbly, timey wimey.
wibbly
Yes.
wobbly,
Timey-wimey, yeah.
timey wimey. And George was like, great. Go ahead and do it. But then I realized, oh, I might have I might have written a check that I can't cash because then I realized that the story would need like three different openings, and I had never done that before.
Hmm.
Because it has the opening with Nog, then it has the opening with Jake, and then it has the opening with Ben. I had
Mhm.
never done that. I didn't even know. I was like, oh, this is,
You had
but it worked.
layers of frames. It did work. Yeah.
It
Right,
flowed. It flowed
right.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No, it was great. And one of the actually, you know, you really expand on the things that were given a lot of clues. And before I go further, I just want to say, if I say things that are spoilers or that you don't want people, just like stop me and Mike can cut it out. um, but that so much of the Sisko family
right.
is we get a lot of information about generations of Siskos like on the show, but it's really interesting the things that you kind of leaned into this idea of we see Joseph Sisko sort of scold him about his replicated food, right?
Hmm.
And you really sort of extrapolated from that and made the Siskos really kind of like Luddites. That
Yeah.
that was uh can you tell us about that choice? Like,
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. You're 100% right. I realized that I was like, well, I want to talk about a lot of different things. I knew I wanted to talk about things that hadn't necessarily been done in Star Trek and or Deep Space Nine. So we all watched Deep Space Nine, right? And we watched those episodes where Ben and his family are in New Orleans, and all we see is like the outside facade that says
hmm,
Cisco's,
Right.
and we see inside, right? And that's it. And we don't really know a lot about what's happening in New Orleans and everything. And I did so much research, I actually found the original schematics to the sets for Cisco's,
Mm.
oh my
Get
God.
out of
so that
here.
I this was before I started writing. So I found those so that I knew when I was like describing things and where the tables were and where the chairs were that I was on point with the actual sets.
And
And
is this something that you can just like you can make a
Yeah,
phone call and you'd be like, "It's Derek, I'm writing the book.
yeah,
Hand
what
oh
over
did
the
you
goods," or
no,
do?
did you have to really?
no.
Yeah.
I searched. I remember it was like 2 in the morning and I found it one night. I just kept searching. I was like, I know it's out here somewhere because it's Star Trek. I know
Yeah.
someone has,
Yeah.
and I
And
found the blueprints. Yeah,
that's crazy.
it's crazy. But I found
Wow.
the blueprints to the original Cisco to Cisco's, and the staircase. And I wanted to know like where the staircase went up to because then the outside facade of the building had like 3 or 4 floors, and I just wanted to know. I'm very big on research, so I wanted to know everything that I was doing and make it all like so that when I write it, it makes sense.
Yes.
See, you could have just watched the episode, but you were like, no, I need the scenic
no.
schematics.
Right. No. And so I knew that I wanted to talk about World War III, and I knew that there was like elements of things that as fans we never really heard or read about, or well, maybe have read some of the books, but we never seen. Like what was Earth like right during and after World War III? Um, the 24th century, but what's it like for cities and that are really immersed or have been for centuries immersed in culture?
Mhm.
Do they just give up all that culture for the future, for replicators and holodecks? What do they do? And then I
Right.
realized that Joseph was my lead into that, because Joseph doesn't like anything. I'm like, why doesn't Joseph like these things? Is he just a crotchety old guy? Is it just that? And I'm like, no, it has to be deeper. And then I realized that this is also an autobiography, not only of the Sisko family, but of, in many ways, Joseph, you know? And
Yeah.
he gave me that lead in of why he doesn't want to, his feelings, and a lot of it deals with African American culture and what happened leading up to World War III, because Gene Roddenberry says it all goes to hell.
Right.
Before we have that future that we all love, Gene Roddenberry says it goes to hell, and it's only after it all goes to hell that we wake up and like, what are we doing?
Right.
You know? And so I was like, oh man, this is a great opportunity. And Joseph explains to Ben, yeah, I don't know, it was really bad for humanity, and it was really bad for anyone that was an other. Anyone. It wasn't just people of color. If you were an other, it was really bad. They were like, and even in the book, I say there were sundown towns where if you were considered an other, but New Orleans became like a haven for people to go, and it makes sense because New Orleans has always been a place of culture and freedom and
Sure.
fighting for freedom and all that.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there you go. There
I
you
mean,
go.
I definitely got chills reading that portion of the book. I, I mean, especially with with where we're at now.
Yeah.
The ideas of like New Orleans being a sanctuary city. I can't remember specifically. Did you say sanctuary city? Is that what you call it? What did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't call it. Well, I think I did. I think I do. I remember, right? I think I did in the book. I called it a sanctuary city, but I know they had every city had remembrance centers,
Right.
Mm.
Yes, yeah, that's
Right.
that as well.
right? I
But
figured you need to remember what happened so that you don't repeat those mistakes. So that's where
that's
he takes Ben to a remembrance center. Yeah, yeah,
Well, it's also interesting. A lot of times in Star Trek, there's a way that you can look at certain chapters in the franchise as that Earth's history has been is monocultural.
Mm.
That at a certain point, just because we have that class and race and all of the things that go along with that are a thing of the past, that means that we have a band that we're all the same, and that
right,
our cultural
right,
differences are no longer pertinent. And so this is, and Star Trek doesn't really, we talk about culture between humans and other species, but that
Mhm.
we never
right.
really, that you really sort of take us into into culture in a way that other Star Trek stories really don't, I think, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I think so. I mean, I remember you guys were talking in Matt's when you had Matt on earlier. They're talking about assimilation, and
Mm, mm,
you
Mm.
could really look at some of Star Trek that we've all assimilated to this mono future of peace, and for the sake of that peace, we're all adopting replicators, holodecks, and this is just the way it is. But I'm like, is that realistic? No.
right.
Yeah.
You know, our are people going, there's are still grandparents in the future. There are still parents. There are still
Yeah.
children. People are going to hold on to this history, these memories,
Mhm.
these cultures, and they're not going to just like, oh yeah, I've got a replicator. Let me let go of that of those things that my family came around, those dinners that my family came around, or prayers, or this or that, and I understand because of how Star Trek started and how Gene Roddenberry started it, there was just some things he just didn't necessarily address. But this was an opportunity to say, hey, those things still exist.
Mhm.
People are still holding those things dear to them and living in the 24th century. So it was an opportunity to do that, and I think it worked out really well, thankfully.
Some of the results of this, though, I guess I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what a young Sisko would be like. And in this, it's really interesting. There's clues of it in Emissary, like when he first meets Jennifer, and he's like, "I'm the man you're gonna marry." Which, by the way, you give us that scene in its entirety. I was like, just thank you for that. But that, uh, but that he raised the way he was, and without
Right.
realizing that he was raised strangely, he's kind of
Mm.
an innocent in a way that you wouldn't expect, but that kind
Mhm.
of actually really makes sense with the sort of cut through the bullshit adult that we
Right.
know. It
Right.
is not, it's not obvious that he would have been an innocent as a youth, but and maybe that's the wrong word. I don't know.
No, no, no. I think you're right on it, because the challenge for me was deconstructing Benjamin Sisko, and in many ways deconstructing what Mr. Brooks did to create, or his creation of that character that was given to him. And I was like, well, how the heck am I going to do this? And this line stuck in my head before I even started writing was, I was 8 years old before I realized I lived in the 24th century.
Mm,
And I was like, yes, yes, how do I build everything around that sentence? And that was like the first sentence I had for the book, and I was like, how do I build everything around that sentence? And you have a kid that's homeschooled. We're talking about teachers. He's
yeah,
homeschooled,
yeah,
and it's the restaurant, and next door is a Cisco hotel. So he doesn't really see a lot of the 24th century as a kid, and um yeah, his family are, in many ways, they're like the Amish, are like Luddites, and so they don't have computers, or they don't have a transporter in the house. They don't have replicas in the house. So for him, these things are not discussed or talked about.
hmm
And then when he sees like his first transporter, he's like, "What is going on?"
and then they've actually got one in the house.
Right. It was right. They didn't have one, but it was in the hotel next door. And he's like an 8-year-old kid. He's in the hotel next door, and he sees somebody beam in to the hotel, and he's like, "They weren't there a second ago,
Yeah.
and now they're there. What is happening?" And this other his babysitter, this kid that's at the front desk, is like, "Yeah, that's right. You've never seen a transporter, have you, Ben?" And he's like, "No." And it's a great. I really loved writing that scene, because hopefully that's us seeing a transporter, for the first time. He just goes nuts like a kid. Any kid would with a transporter.
I mean, I
So
think there's something about that Benjamin Sisko that's growing up, and about the Sisko family in this book, and how they, haven't really embraced technology the way that
right,
other people in the 24th century did. That really just grounds um, the Trek universe in a certain reality that really makes it almost like it was a history book, and we're seeing like a filling in of the gaps between World War III, between our time now and the 24th century, if that makes any
yes,
sense. It's a great access point, and I think for someone who's, even if they're not a Star Trek fan, they can still understand certain elements of, not adapting, or not embracing technology, or World War III, or the Hall of Remembrance. This story, these things are accessible, and are a good tie into the Trek universe as well. It really made it. It really grounded the world in reality. I thought it was great.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
Thank
filling in
you,
a
thank
lot
you.
of
And
gaps about life on Earth in the 24th century in general.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I just thought it's also a commentary on technology today, because a lot of society today tells us if you want to be a part of society, you have to have technology.
Mm.
Mhm.
And that's not true. I mean, we all use it, but it is still tools. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that these elements, these phones, these things are really wondrous and they're great. We're having this conversation because of technology, but this is a tool and it's not something to substitute for having a life,
Yes.
Yes.
you
Yes.
know? And so that's part of also what I was trying to convey. And in some ways, Joseph even tells Ben, there's a difference between enjoyment and fulfillment, you
Mm.
know, in life. And so these are things that I want to be able to talk about. And I think this is a great way to do that, through
Yeah.
this
And
family.
also just thinking about in this way the maintaining of history, or safeguarding history, especially Black history,
Hmm.
in the family, especially with in reality Black history is skewed or erased, or and
Right.
so we have that element here of of again a Black family safeguarding the history in a way, and I think that's awesome too.
Yeah. That was there was a point, I'm gonna be really honest, there was a point it was like, well, what am I going to talk about? What am I not going to talk about in this book?
Mm,
And I said to myself, there's no way I can skip over this. There's no way, being a Black man, being a writer, how am I going to skip over this? And I'm a huge fan of James Baldwin, and James Baldwin says it's the responsibility of a writer to be a mirror to society. And I'm like, well, I don't want to beat people over the head, but this, if I skip over it, people would be like, what? How is
mm,
this guy's? It was.
Mm.
I think that would be strange, skipping over it. And again, thank you to the Deep Space Nine writers, because Joseph Sisko gave me so much, and I realized that I could give Joseph Sisko some 20th and 21st century trauma that
mm,
is still there. Is still there in the Sisko family from being a Black man, and he's telling Ben, no Sisko's left Earth, because not because we can't, we can, but because we want to hold on to our culture. We want to hold on to everything that was fought for, and everything that we have. And he feels, as the patriarch of the family, that doing that would dissolve that the family and that culture. And Ben tells him, well, this is the reason I have to leave, because I won't forget those things. I'll be taking them with me.
mm, mm.
And then father and son come to an understanding, which was a place that I thought was needed, so that when you see these characters on Deep Space Nine, you kind of understand where they both started. Hopefully that was the intent. And to say something about um, African American, the African American, in all honesty, African American struggle, where we are, and hopefully where we're all going. In the future.
Right,
Well, and I
right.
think I think that you were able to talk about that in a more direct way than the show often was able
Oh
to
yeah.
do, in a,
Yeah.
which was terrific. Let me ask you, there's all of these, I mean, this is like an overused term, but legacy characters that appear. And this is where I'm stopping myself, because there's some that were, it just kept giving these moments of just like delight. And some of them, I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up.
Oh, there's a
There's
lot.
one or two,
There's a
and there's
lot.
maybe some that I missed. Um, but Susanna would never have gotten it.
Right.
I had to look it up,
Right.
and then it clicked when
Right.
I did. Um, how did you, like? Were there just some people that were like, I just need to find a way to get this person in because I love this character, or how did some of these bubble up in your brain?
Yes, yes. Part of it is I love this character. I've always wanted to do something with this character. Part of it, honestly, is okay. I'm I'm on cloud nine. I've been given the mandate to write a Star Trek novel. I'm gonna
Yes.
do it, right? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna swing
Use.
for, right? I
Take
can do
it.
it,
Go
right? I
for it.
swung, right? I'm gonna go
Yeah.
for it, but not just to satiate my own desires, but hopefully things that people would be like, oh, wait a minute, is that who I think that is? And just to remind people, it was also a fun way, I think, to dip into certain eras of like next gen
Mm-hmm.
and write like people, not the way we necessarily see them now, or but to see like I'll say like Data, but Data before season one,
Yeah.
Data is totally different than
Yeah.
season seven next gen Data, and just different characters, and that was so much fun. It was so much fun that I had a scene that my editor George was like, yeah, pull back a little bit on this. And I was like,
Or
and
like, for instance,
I was
the
like,
crew of the
really? He was like, yeah,
Saratoga, you were obligated to fill it. I mean, we saw them on
Right.
screen, right? And he's
right. We
on
saw
that
them on
ship for a
screen, right,
period of years, I would think. So like,
right,
they're people in his life, they're real characters to him. So you were obligated to bring them to life,
right.
and you did it in a very actually surprising way. And but it's the ones that you were not like, I could have predicted, like, okay, we're gonna meet the captain of the Saratoga, yes, but like it's
Right.
the ones that I would not have predicted that delighted me so much that yeah, I mean, I won't say
Um,
more, but
no, I'm glad. I'm glad. Like, yeah, that was a lot of fun. The bridge crew band, that was a lot of
Yes.
fun.
yeah.
Because
Yes. Loved
He's a jazz
that.
musician, like, what the
the
hell,
jazz
really?
musician,
It
a Vulcan jazz musician. What is going on? But I'm like, no, that's perfect. I
Played by
love
J.G.
writing
Hertzler.
Vulcans. Played by right, played by JG. Right, his first was that his first ever Star Trek? It may have
I
been his
think
first ever.
I think that's the first
Maybe,
time we
maybe,
saw
yeah,
him, and
yeah.
maybe it was in DS9. Yeah.
Was in DS9
I
in
think so.
Emissary,
Yeah.
and it's a great scene that he's playing. I mean, he's only in it for a couple seconds, but it's great. And I was like, oh man, I gotta give this crew their due. I'm like, how am I gonna do it? And I don't like doing things that have been done. So I was like, yeah, yeah. I was like, and it was JG that I kept watching that scene over and over, that where we see him. And I'm like, yeah, jazz. And when it's New Orleans, yeah, I can do this. I can do a holodeck sequence. And yeah, yeah. So that was a lot of fun to write that. I had someone that has actually gone to that nightclub. That's an actual nightclub, and they told me that I got that nightclub perfectly. They said they sat there,
Mm.
and that's
Mm.
perfect. And I was like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, you Preservation Hall." They said you got Preservation Hall perfectly. So that's the best um, compliment I could ever get. Just fun, doing some really fun characters. There's so many. I uh, who am I thinking about? His love interest
Oh my god.
in
Yes, sorry.
yes, right? In
Yes.
The other, can I say it?
yes,
Twyla
go.
Scott.
Travis Scott, yes. Thank you. I was thinking on it.
Damien,
Travis
Sorry.
I
Scott.
am
I've
loving your
always
enthusiasm. I am loving Damien. I
me
love it.
too.
I
Me
love it.
too. Me too.
I'm
Thank you.
trying.
Thank you
I'm
for
trying
this.
to
Thank
be on
you.
good behavior and like not ruin the book for everybody who's going to listen to this. But
Travis Scott was like the last episode of season one of Next Gen.
Hmm.
And I'm like, how are you going to throw this
mm-hmm.
gorgeous woman? She's supposedly the youngest
Yes,
person to ever become a
Right.
captain.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And she had like all of like 3 minutes, and it was badass. And that's it. And I always remembered that. I always remembered her performance. And I was like, I was looking at timelines for the book, and I was like, you know what? I think I can do Travis Scott and Ben in the Academy. And then once I did that, then I was like, you know what? I can do a backdoor origin story of Travis Scott. And then that was off to the races,
So cool.
Yeah. And I will say here, and I don't think anyone has picked up on it, but in the book she resigns her commission. And I'll say, because I don't think a lot of people picked up on it, but the words that she says in her resignation is the same words that Sloane says to Bashir. So take that as you will.
Spin off, whole new book.
I mean,
and that was done on purpose.
So she's resigned her commission.
She's resigned her right.
Okay.
I mean, I've been saying it for
I did
a
not
while.
catch that. No, I would. That is a deep cut.
But
that's
Derek,
a really deep cut.
I want to know has anyone called that out?
No, that's why I called it out, because it's like it's so deep. It's like, what? It's like, you doing what? No, yeah. So, but that's the fun of Easter eggs and really deep cuts and stuff.
Derek, I'm waiting for the day. I know I keep saying it to you. I am waiting for the day to when you get to do some kind of DS9 centered. See, I am waiting for the day. I'm gonna continue to speak and put it out there, but I'm waiting for that day.
Well, bless you, man.
That invites the speculative question.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back, I mean, yes, we got our little taste of going back to Deep Space Nine on Lower Decks, right? And that was fun, and it was. But was it satisfying in the way that those of us who were really fans are? I don't know. So how could we go back there?
Well, we all recently saw Unification.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We did.
Right? That 7 or 9 minute piece, animated piece that was done of Kirk traversing a different timeline to go and have reunite with Spock, and I was like, that's exactly how you do a Deep Space Nine reunion, and you could do the same 8 minutes, right? You don't have to do a whole long. You don't need an hour. You could do 8 minutes. You could do less than 8 minutes, and you could do Benjamin Sisko, and I could do that. If I was I'd be honored if anybody would ask me to do that. But I'd just be nuts to just see it, just to watch it. But that's how we could get that. That's how we could get that. If they did Kirk, you could have someone play, Benjamin Sisko, and then you're in. There you go, off to the races.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. So a book like this is, in the larger scheme of canon, is considered beta canon, right? The novels are. So when you go into a project like this, what obligation do you have to existing beta canon?
None really. I used a little bit of beta canon just because I felt, hey, that's some cool nods to people here and there. But I don't really have any. I don't think any writer really has any. You can, I didn't.
Like, for instance, there's a war with the Zenkethi, right? And I was like, is that any? I actually don't know. Is that anywhere in canon, or is that your own invention, or is that where did that come from?
It gets. Sorry,
I did use some of it. I used. I think there's the description of Zenkethi I used from a book. And the war I used, but the particulars, that's all me. Like, how, what was happening and the Zenkethi tactics and all that. That was all me. But, and I think a few names of ships I used from beta canon. But most of my stuff was from actual canon. But yeah, you can, and I think it's cool if you can, because you're nodding to other writers that have done some phenomenal pieces of work. So
the other thing that you had the gift of doing was naming a whole bunch of ships.
Yeah.
There were many that jumped out at me, but yeah, that was like, I was like, this is a fun thing to get to do.
Right, yeah, this is a really fun thing to get to do.
USS Paul Robeson, was it one of them?
USS Paul Robeson. Oh, I mean, if you're gonna swing, right?
Yes,
right.
And why wouldn't there be names of these individuals? yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot of fun. James Baldwin and Octavia Butler are very prominent in the book. Um, this was all things I was like, first I have a conversation with myself and I say, should I do this? I'm like, yeah, it's a little self-indulgent, but I think people will get something from this as well.
Well, it's not
So,
like you named
but
it after
yeah,
yourself.
Right.
right. No, I
It's
wouldn't
not
do. I would never do
self-indulgent at
that.
all.
Yeah, yeah, but I would
Yeah.
never. I mean, self-indulgent in the fact that I really want to see that. You know, you know. But yeah, I would never name it after me. But yeah, the Paul Robeson. There's just some. There's just. I think there's an Octavia Butler class ship in there that they talk about. Yeah, there's just so many tidbits. At one point, Ben's mom tells him they're getting into good trouble,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is right.
Yes.
You
Clock
know,
that.
so it's like if you
He's
know, you know, if
Yeah.
you know what I'm
yes.
Yeah.
talking about, you know. So yeah,
And
I
speaking
mean,
of Ben's mother, by the way, just knowing that she's not on Deep Space Nine,
right.
there's certain things that you know that you know how they end, right? Or you don't, but don't know the details, but generally, right? So I just every scene that she appeared in that hung over in my experience of it. So you're just like, it's just it's just like heartbreaking and
Yeah,
beautifully done.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. I know she gave him that the book for Maya Angelou, and that's reminiscent of my mom giving me a book when I was a little kid that I've had all my life that I look back on, and it's just those things. And I'm like, well, I'm a grown ass man, but I look at that book that my mom gave me. Why wouldn't Ben Sisko? Why not?
yes.
Right?
There's I mean, and I think I probably asked you this before. I think I asked you this when we were in Vegas, but there are moments with Ben Sisko throughout his autobiography where I read certain things and I'm thinking, okay, I wonder if this is part of him. That is, I mean,
Right.
one thing for me that stuck out, but it's because it was part of my childhood was oh God, I don't how do I say this without giving too much away? Um
Well,
Model
we're not
kits.
live. So if you screw it up, we'll cut it
Okay.
Right.
The model was Ben's
Oh, the
mother giving
models.
him the model kits to build. And just him kind of starting off with one and getting more and more and just getting more involved in it. And then obviously it goes on to him, being an engineer and then, building the Defiant.
Right.
But that kid, that was me, the model kits and, my dad giving me my first model kit. And I did a horrible job, but
Same.
I just
Yeah, same.
right.
Right.
But there's
Same. Right. Right.
Right. Those
there's that so
nacelles, they droop.
yes, they droop. God. But there's that Trekkie through line, that Trekkie commonality
Yes.
that again makes this story, Ben's story, so grounded that
Right.
it's personal. It brings you in. But is
Yeah.
that something that you did
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a
No, that's a real thing. And this is conversation. Like I didn't really leave anything. I told my editor. I said, look, I have an artificial hip. I had a really bad accident as a kid,
Mhm.
and I was in the cast twice for 6 months at a time.
Oh,
Mm.
And to be a kid like around 12, 13, and to be that age and to be in a cast for 6 months, it's like
Mm.
it's a sentence. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
yeah.
sentence. I was going nuts. I was going nuts. You're in the cast, you can't get out of bed, but you have to heal and all these things. And my mom bought me model starships,
Ugh.
and it is an incredible moment. I didn't realize that it gave me focus
Mm.
and it taught me patience because just like you guys, my first one was crap, and it was like, what am I doing? But then you sit there and you have nothing else to do, right?
Right.
And as a kid, and kids, if you give them something that they enjoy, they will have this like they will have blinders and they will just zone and zero in on the thing. And so I just started building starships. And in a lot of ways, that I won't lie, that saved me mentally.
Mhm.
Sure.
From the thing of being, my friends would come to see me, hang out for a couple hours, and be like, okay, bye, I'm gonna go hang out. That's heartbreaking to a kid,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? But I had my ships. I had comics and I had my ships and I
Mhm.
Mm.
had movies. Those three things, and so I was like, again, I would have that conversation. Is it too self-indulgent? And I was like, no, because this is a great thing to give to Ben, because then that explains how he becomes an engineer and why he always wanted to be an engineer. Even though when we get to DS9, he talks about it. We don't really see a lot of it, but that had to be there. So I'm like, yeah, this is why he was that engineer, because of what his mom did, the love that he felt from the starships, and that's so I gave that to him, and it worked, So yeah,
Yeah, it played beautifully. It came out beautifully. Yeah.
write
Well,
what you know.
and also his doctor. His doctor was
Oh.
a nice little. It was a,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. His doctor and Ralph, his roommate in the.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Which is like my take on I'm not gonna lie, it's my take on Jacob Park, but just love that character, Jacob Park.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was like, I love that character.
Okay, I can see that.
So right, so I was like, I love that character. So let me do a little something with that. So yeah, just
No, he's the
try to
Telluride
give
who loves
everybody.
pizza, right?
He's right. I tell you right, he
Yeah.
loves pizza and baseball.
Yep.
That's nuts,
That's
right?
That's
It's
amazing.
But
like
it's
right,
awesome.
right.
I mean,
And he
Worf
loves
loves
pepperoni
prune
pizza.
juice. So
Right, Worf.
we can
loves-
have we can have that.
Well, that's something we've talked about this, that sometimes Star Trek fails us in the sort of monoculture of alien worlds,
Mhm.
right? So that when we all like things that are unexpected and have weird things that are contradictory, and
Right.
and it's great in Star Trek when we can get those kinds of characters too.
That's life.
Yeah.
Can you
I want
talk?
to ask. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to see if could you talk a little bit about Avery Brooks versus not versus, but been like separating the actor from the man. Like as you wrote the book, were you envisioning Mr. Brooks?
Man, that's really tough, man, because my first hurdle was how do you separate those two, right? You really can't, right?
Right, right.
Avery Brooks is Benjamin Sisko. Benjamin Sisko is Avery Brooks.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And my first thought was, oh, I'll go and I'll find something that Avery Brooks did, Mr. Brooks did when he was younger, and I'll use that as a young Ben Sisko. And so I watched Spencer for Hire, Man Called Hawk, his earlier stuff, and I realized really quickly that he's a really phenomenal actor. That is nothing he brings to Ben Sisko is what he's done before.
Crazy.
So I was like, oh man, so I'm really going to have to build this character from the ground up. I can't cheat. There's no hacks,
Yeah.
And so I watched In the Pale Moonlight, because that's really, it's just like 45 minutes of Ben Sisko speaking,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I watched that 3 times back to back, and I really got his voice after watching it 3 times back to back. And then that was it. I never watched another Deep Space Nine episode while writing the book. I watched scenes like on YouTube, but I never watched another episode to write the book.
Was that was a purposeful choice to avoid?
Oh yeah.
Just
I still haven't
rewriting
watched
things
it.
that. Yeah.
Because you want some distance,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't want to just immerse yourself, because then am I just mimicking performances?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we
Yeah.
talked a little
Oh,
bit
for
about
sure.
this, Matt. You as an actor, you don't want to mimic someone else's
No.
performance. You want to bring something
Something
fresh
fresh
to
and
it,
new.
And I've had a little tiny bit of acting, so I don't want to do that. So I was like, just leave Deep Space Nine alone, man. Just watch Pale Moonlight 3 times and be done with it, And I still haven't gotten back to it. I will, but it's still, for me, it's been like a year now, but it's still fresh for me. I want to watch it and be like, it's Deep Space Nine. I want to enjoy it, but it's just all up in my head now. So,
Yeah. I mean, sorry,
one of the fascinating things, and this is when it's a shame that Lanita is not here, that if you listen to us long enough, we're obsessed with hair. And we are like, it always comes back to, but what about her hair? Which Troy Bunn was, etc.
right.
And Sisko is unquestionably What, Mike? It's true, right?
You just made us the gayest Star Trek podcast.
I mean, we kind of are. Name another one. But we're obsessed with her.
Sure.
But that Sisko is one of the characters who had like a distinct character change, evolution that came with transformation. That came with it.
There's a big deal in Deep Space Nine.
It is. It's like Riker grew the beard. Like,
Yes.
you know, like it is.
Sisko
These
was
things happened.
Yeah.
And but you gave him like a full-on journey, and then he gave his sister had her own hair journey, which I loved, and like. And how he meets the barber, and now I'm just running at the mouth about it. But can you talk about that a little bit, where that came from?
Yeah, because, well, again, I think part of it is just Black culture here is a really big deal. And I was like, how am I not going to talk about this? But then I was like, how am I going to talk about this? You know, it was like, how am I going to do it? And then I realized, well, I can talk about Ben's journey. And then at one point when he's in the hospital and his mom is like looking at him while they're talking, he's like, why are you looking at me like that? And she's like, oh, your hair's growing out. I need to like cornroll your hair.
Cornrow,
like,
yes.
You know? And that's what happened to me as a kid, you know, like, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's a Black experience, but that's also a family experience. There's not a family on this planet that can't identify with that on some level, right? Bringing a kid's hair, or you need a haircut now, or you know, and so that's what that was. And then I was like, oh, well, now I can just lean in. And I was like, you know, I know we had the barber on the Enterprise, but then on the Enterprise D, but then I was like, wait a minute, you have all of these species, right? I was like, how many species are in the Federation? How many must have like fur or hair or this or that? They have to have somebody cutting all this stuff, right? And if they're at the academy, they're not going to go off the grounds. So it just started to like right itself, man.
It was like a little sub world you built in that barbershop.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the barbershop, there's no ranks. You know, if there is a rank, it's the people that own the barbershop, you know?
Right.
And I thought that was.
And how did he get into the barbershop?
Right, from Susanna and making the jambalaya, right? Which is nuts.
And there's like
so many levels.
There's a thing about this, and I don't keep bringing it back to Black culture, but there's like some elements about this of like, you know, having that Black friend that's like, hey, who did your fade? Like,
right,
you know, or like here, go here, because I know you don't go here,
right?
Or I mean, even that element of because Damien, I don't know, you know, or Mike, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie called Barbershop, that came out with Ice Cube like back in 2002, 2003. But you know, I think that movie beautifully kind of at one point has commentary about how the barbershop is like the community oh god, like the what is it? Not the town hall.
It's like it is though in some ways like a town hall. It's a place where you can talk and get things out and have conversations.
Yes, a country club, like the Black Man's Country Club.
Yeah.
Yes, I never thought about it like that.
That's like that was one of the wording that was used. But I mean, you captured that element again with like there being no ranks in the barbershop. You know, just it being a safe space.
Right.
That's all I want to make a commentary on.
And at the barbershop, the Academy barbershop, there's even a picture there with Spock. Got his haircut, right? So, right?
And the bowl they used, right?
The bowl they used.
It's funny, right? You know, so everybody goes there, you know, and there's like ensigns sitting next to admirals waiting to be next in line to get their haircut because everybody has to. We're all human, and I always try to like pull people out of the 24th century in the book and say, hey, we're human, man, and you know, we got to eat, we got to get haircuts, we got to, you know. Even in the 24th century, these things have to happen. They have to happen. You got to get a haircut, you know? So why not just do it old school and have people sitting there and, you know, like somebody with shears and doing it that way and having conversations.
Yeah.
It's another thing that you know, some of these questions in Star Trek that recur, like the most recent one to me was, is is Picard's wine actually bad, or is it the sour mead, right?
Right.
But I
Worf's
think
review.
you have answered the question: is Sisko's cooking actually delicious? And it is. There's no question. There's no question.
No
It is
question.
like,
No
don't read it
question.
when you're hungry. Kind of, yeah.
Right. No. I mean, well, his father runs a restaurant. So, and he grew up next to his father. So he's got to know this is where he got it from,
Mhm.
and so he's really good at it. And that was one of his like lead-ins in the academy. That helped a lot. That helped a lot. But also, he had never eaten replicated food until he got to the academy. So that was a
Yeah.
problem for him. So,
Yeah.
real life things that you may not see or think about on an episode, I wanted to try and bring, hey, this guy's been eating regular food all his life in New Orleans, and now he's got to eat, sequenced protein. His stomach may not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I never would have thought of that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
I have sort of a conceptual question for you, and I mean it in the most literal way. Literally speaking, who is Benny Russell?
oh wow. Well, to answer
Yeah,
that.
I mean, this is a question for the room, but I feel like you're our expert here, so I'm putting it to you.
That's about how that question could be answered in a lot of different ways. You could say he's the dreamer. You could say he's the dream. Literally, he's an author in 1950s from the episode Far Beyond the Stars. That's who he is, literally. But he represents so much to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a phenomenal character. I met Avery Brooks, Mr. Brooks, once. I was going into a nightclub with my film mentor. He was coming out. This is like 90, probably like 96, 97,
Wow.
98, or around there.
Yeah.
And I just shook his hand and I was like, thank you for your work. And I asked him, what was it like to direct Far Beyond the Stars? And the man's energy was like palpable. And he looked at me and he said, necessary. And walked away.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
which is like cryptic, but not, and like,
but not,
no,
but
it says
right,
everything.
Exactly. You know exactly what he meant when he said necessary. You know exactly what he meant.
So,
Wow.
right. So yeah, and Benny Russell's, has a part to play in the book. You could say a really big part, And I thought that was necessary, not to,
yeah,
but because there were things that I wanted to put in this book, and I felt if I didn't put Benny Russell in there, people would be like, well, wait a minute, how are you not going to have Benny Russell? And that was such a monumental episode, How are you not going to talk about In the Pale Moonlight? How are you not going to, certain things have to be touched on, in this book, because it's an autobiography of a father talking to his son, but it's also Deep Space Nine, and we still need those things as well.
Right. Like The Visitor, there are episodes that you have to address.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to. You just have to. I would not be doing justice if I didn't.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Really, really good stuff. And even just thinking about like the moments of non-linear time that Ben experiences, I wanted to like
Yes.
show people, or at least hopefully touch on what it must be like for him to be so disjointed out of non-linear time, And I remember talking to in the outline, talking to my editor, and I was like, yeah, we could drop these in, and it's just really disjointing. And he was like, oh yeah, that could work. So
I think it does. I think it does.
What's next? What do you want to write next?
I would love to do anything Star Trek. That would be fantastic. Of course, because it's an incredible universe. I'm currently though working on well, Autobiography is also my first novel. I've never done a novel before until then. So
Which
now
is
I'm
crazy.
currently,
Which is crazy.
which is
I
crazy.
know.
Which
It's
is
insane.
nuts.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm working on my second novel, which is kind of like my first because it's not an IP. It's my own work. Yeah, yeah. So
awesome.
It's going to be big and expansive and hopefully things that people will enjoy.
Awesome. That's a tease.
That is a tease.
Yeah.
That's a tease. I'm like,
little bit.
Is
Bit.
that it?
I love it.
Little bit. I'll say a cosmological event happens to Earth, and we look at how different nations deal with the cosmological event.
So a little story.
Yeah, so it's a little tiny story. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Bit off a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. Big swing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's exciting. Should we move into our rapid fire?
Yeah. So there's just a few questions that we ask all of our guests. So some of them might be obvious. Some of them you might have never been asked before.
Okay.
And Matt has returned after having done this himself, so it can't be that
bad. How did you first find Star Trek? What's your Star Trek meet cute story?
Wow. I was a little kid. My dad fixed televisions. Back in the day when you just didn't throw it out, you'd actually get somebody to fix them.
Right.
And I remember he was working on one while it was on, and I still don't understand that. But it was playing Star Trek while he was working on it, and the episode was Devil in the Dark, and Spock has got the Horta mind meld. And I remember, like, why is this man in so much pain? And why, and I was like, I don't know, maybe 5, 6. And it just pulled me in. That scene pulled me in, and I was hooked after that, man, because it was like a great scene. If you're going to watch Star Trek, it was the scene.
It's a great episode.
Yeah, it was a great episode. So that was how I started watching Star Trek. Yeah.
Nice. Is there a series that speaks to you more than the others?
Well, not really. I will say of course, I love Deep Space Nine. I really am enjoying Prodigy because it's so hard to write Star Trek in a half-hour segment and do it so well for kids. I really like the fact that it's structured for kids, but everyone can watch it. So I think Prodigy is just a top-notch show, but they're all like, I mean, they all have something great about them that I love. Every series,
Nice. If you could have dinner with 3 characters, the characters, not the actors, who would they be and why?
Oh man.
And would it be at Sisko's? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, it probably would be at Sisko's, right?
Look, have Sisko cook.
Have Sisko cook. It probably would be at Sisko's. Probably Sisko, just because it's Sisko, and just to get that energy. Spock. And this is going to be a little bit of a weird one, but it would either be Khan, Noonien Singh, just because he's nuts, and I would just love to have a conversation with him, or Gary Mitchell.
Oh,
both of these guys are, they're like, really out there. But I really would love to have a conversation where I wouldn't get killed at the end, but a conversation, but a conversation with those cats just to see because just great characters,
Talk about a power lunch. There's a lot of power at that table.
Yeah, a lot of power at that table, right?
If you were alive in the 24th century, what would your life be like? Would you join Starfleet? Would you be on a station? Would you stay on Earth?
I've thought about that. I would petition. At first, I thought, I might, I want to be a captain. Who doesn't want to be a captain, right?
Obviously.
But I think, right? Obviously, I think I would petition Starfleet, almost demand that Starfleet have writers or journalists on every starship.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because if you think about it, every time we watch Star Trek, right, we're seeing everything from the Federation Starfleet point of view.
Right.
Does Earth really know what's going down? No. Right? I mean, we really don't have anyone on those ships that's not a Starfleet member,
Right.
to record and find out what's going on. So I think there should be journalists, and not have any agenda, but just
Right.
to say,
Just to
and just to document what's going on, because you have humans going out into the farthest reaches of the galaxy, and somebody should be documenting all that.
right.
Yeah.
You're making me
That's
think of the episode when Jake and Bashir end up
Yes,
on the
yes.
sort of stuck on the war planet,
yes,
and Jake writes his account of it. Yeah,
right. And everyone is riveted when Jake comes back, and they're like, "Oh
yeah.
wow, we see ourselves in this." And I think that's something that's lost on Starfleet because of because of the future,
Right. Right.
So yeah,
Right. It's just captain's logs, and that's, just the facts. That's different. Yeah.
right.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
Oh, that's an
So
interesting
you want to be
story.
Jake? Is what you're saying?
I want to be Jake, and that'd be a great series, right? Let's just get rid of me. Let's just have Sirach Lofton on the show doing that.
Yes.
Let's just call it a day, and we'll all
that
be
would be
happy,
interesting.
right?
Someone get Sirach on the Zoom right now.
That's right.
Paramount, if you're listening.
So many
Paramount.
stories in a show like that. So many stories.
Yeah. All right. What is your go-to holodeck program?
Wow. Oh man, that's nuts. You want to know? I'll be honest with you guys. I If I was like in the 24th century, I'd be like, you know what? I want to be like a Jedi Knight. And I mean,
Nice.
I want to be a Jedi Knight, and I want to fight the Empire because I'm already in the 24th century. So it'd probably be something Star Wars because that's the other franchise that I love. So it would probably be something Star Wars because you could do it in a holodeck.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes you think of like Tom Paris and Captain Proton, like
Right.
it's just a different adventure,
Right. Exactly.
Creating vintage sci-fi in actual space. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Rapid fire. Crusher or Pulaski?
I like Pulaski. I don't know why I like Pulaski.
Well, the knowing laugh. Are you doing Klingon Tai Chi with Worf or leotard yoga with Beverly Indiana?
Pulling on Tai Chi all day, every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Decisive answer.
Are you drinking tea Earl Grey hot or coffee black?
Ractigino.
Ractigino.
That needs to be a third choice.
It does. We need to
Let's
add that
rewrite
as
the
a
question.
third choice.
Oh, Ractigino.
Yes.
I felt that coming.
You did, right? Yeah,
I did.
If you had a replicator sitting next to you right now, what would you make?
Honestly, I'd probably just use it to you could do so much with it. You could feed people. You could make. I mean, you could do so much with a replicator, man. You know, um, for myself, I don't know, build a house or something. But there's so much stuff you could do with it for people. And I think that's part of the 24th century that we look at. We had just one of those things, the things that we could do. So yeah, that's I would just give it to people and be like, have at it. Print money, print clothes, print food. Just print. Just
Change
this is such like a good human answer. I think my answer is like a burger.
We're food driven here on Hailing Frequencies Open.
Food and hair.
Yes, food and hair. Don't mix them. Who is your bartender, Guinan or Quark?
Oh, did I say Guinan in Quarks?
Ooh.
Right? That would be nuts.
Can you imagine the conversation
right?
that would go down?
And
Lord
she would have eyes everywhere in a very different, separate but equal, different way from Quark.
Right.
He would.
Yes. Yeah, they'd be going at it, and I think that would be fun to just sit back and watch next to Morn, watch the two of them just go at it.
Next book. Someone else's book. Yeah.
All right. Favorite alien species?
I'll be honest, the Vinashari, the one I created in Star Trek Adventures. But I mean, that's a little self-fulfilling. But I would say it's really got to be Klingons. just the fact that they're the samurai of the 24th century.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's what Cleons are, right? And we love
Yeah.
them for their sense of honor and everything that they struggle through. And the bat left. I remember I first saw the bat left. I was like, what is that? That's so cool. So yeah, Cleons. Sure.
Excellent. Who's your captain?
This guy, Sisko, man, he's the most balanced of all the captains. Even to date, he's the most balanced, and I think that's why. But every age I've been, there's been a captain for me. When I was a kid, it was Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
College, it was Picard. You know, then it was Sisko, and now I see elements of myself in Burnham and Pike. So I think every age we have a captain. Even Archer in his naivete early on. You know.
Yeah. There was a little bit of. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that too. I can see that.
And Janeway, of course. Let's not forget Janeway, who just when she's like, I don't like bullies and I don't like you, and I was like, yes.
Sometimes you got to punch your way through.
Yes, right.
Yes.
So,
yeah, hands down for me. The top Janeway moment for me is in Year of Hell. It's at the very end of the first two-parter when God, what's his name? Anorax says to her, you know, your sacrifice will be honored or whatever it is, and she literally just brushes off the helmsman and she sits down in the seat herself. It was a very simple moment. Janeway, and I love it.
Love it.
Now I want to rewatch that episode.
Yeah, no, I do too.
Trust me, just go back and watch that moment. I loved it.
All right, last question. This one's a weird one because it's special to us. Are you on Team Tasha or Team Armis?
Oh, definitely Team Tasha. Yeah, no. I mean, that was really nice. I remember watching that. I was like, what is happening? She's like, oh my, she's dead. She's done. Yeah, definitely Team Tasha. They could have done a lot with that character. I mean, they really
they
ended up bringing her back and doing so much with her. So I don't know. Maybe I should say Armis. I don't know. No, if you don't have Armis, then you don't have Yesterday's Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Hey, maybe Armis. I just
wow. That's a really unique way to back into that answer, by the way.
Right?
That was an interesting journey. But yeah.
You don't have Yesterday's Enterprise. And look at what that brought us. So I guess Armis. Sorry, Tasha.
Well, and what you're missing is our missing third crew member is it's stridently pro Armis.
Yes. Anytime
so
someone
she'll
says
take you
Armis,
on her side regardless of how you got there.
Right.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
This has been so great. Thank you so much for taking time to come on our little pod and share your talent with us. And I can't wait to read the next book. I need to finish this one, to be honest. But yeah, this has been really great.
And if you're listening and you have not already ordered yourself a copy over the course of listening to this, like, take our recommendation, read the book. You'll be glad to
do it now. Do it now.
What is the best way? Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, January 16th, I'm doing Trek Talks. I guess, can I say telethon? Trek Talks, where we're having a panel with myself and the other two authors of the autobiography series.
Oh, cool. Una McCormick and
Una McCormick and David. How can I always forget his name? That's not great.
I love that you just look in your library right there.
Yeah,
right.
David Goodman.
Ah, yes, good.
Yes. Una McCormick and David Goodman. So the three of us are going to be talking about the autobiographies on Trek Talks, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Just to compare notes and do all that. So it's going to be fun.
Very good. Yeah, I was going to say, what is the best way for people to buy the book? Like that helps you?
Probably Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see anything from them buying the book, but I would say Amazon. If you want to pick it up, the quickest way is probably Amazon. And then if you're at a convention, just come by and I'll of course happy to sign whatever you want in the book, for anybody. But yeah, Amazon is probably the easiest way.
Awesome. Where can folks find you if they want to
If they want to,
If they,
anywhere, no,
oh, well,
everywhere.
I was like, how do I finish that sentence? If they want to listen
Where
to
do you
you,
live?
read
What's your street
you,
address,
right?
please?
Where do you
Exactly.
live, right?
Right.
Right. I'm in the Celestial Temple with Ben.
We're coming to your house.
Right, right. No, you can find me D Attico on social media, Dattico. I have that across pretty much all social media, or you can go to my website, Derek Tyler Attico or derekattico.com, and you can find me there.
Awesome.
It's easy,
Awesome.
easy peasy.
And our special guest host, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And where can folks find you?
Thank you for having me back. This has been so fun.
Yeah.
You can find me on Blue Sky, on Threads at 1701BLERD. You can find me on Instagram at 1701BLERD. That's my web series handle for my web series. It's about a gay black nerd that uses Star Trek to cope with life. Stop in, say hi, slide in the DMs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
We don't know anything
Awesome.
about using Star Trek to cope with life. We don't know. That's a foreign concept. I don't know what you're talking about, Matt.
Oh my gosh.
But we all do.
We all do it. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out on YouTube now or on all the socials at Hailing Freak Open or at hailingfrequenciesopen.com. Tell your friends about us, share the love, open those hailing frequencies. And with that,
treat.
thank you. And with that, I will wrap us up to say hailing frequencies closed.
No goodbyes. Just good memories. Hailing frequencies closed, sir.